gal.
Good morning, and deadly news: a bizarre shooting spree in Maryland.
The sniper ravaging the Washington, D.C. area.
So, the mother...
She always leaves.
You don't have anybody else? What are we gonna do with you, huh?
Film Festival.
Oh, cool. How was that?
It was awesome. He's such a delight, easy to talk to, phenomenal actor, producer. I'm glad he's back. You know, I mean, not that he ever really went anywhere, but that he's really sort of, you know, in the scene again right now.
And he seems like an interesting person, so I'm sure that was fun to talk to.
He is, and he's doing a lot of important work.
Good, good,
yeah,
good.
So it was really neat.
Cool. Well, here's a clip from that interview.
I have the honor and privilege of sitting down today with award-winning actor and producer Isaiah Washington. His much-lauded, critically acclaimed and nominated film, Blue Caprice, in which he starred and executive produced. He also is executive producer of a web series for colored boys, and his film Blackbird, which he stars in as well as produces, comes to theaters February 16th. I'm so excited. Thank you for joining us today, Isaiah. May I just say, I've been a fan of you for a long time. I think you're a brilliant actor. I really do. And I think the work that you're doing, the films that I mentioned, the 2 films in the web series, really, really, really important work. What brought you, let's start with Blue Caprice. Why did you feel that was important for you to produce that?
I didn't. It came to me. And destiny.
Sure.
I was busy working as a humanitarian. Just come off a tour of my book, Man from Another Land, and taking speaking engagements and talking about, my belief of DNA has a memory and how I think DNA conversation having memory can eradicate many isms, particularly racisms and most prejudices, because when you're talking about DNA, which is a blueprint of all living things,
right.
We're no longer talking about gender, sexual orientation,
Yeah.
We're not talking about ethnicity, not even talking about culture, we're talking about human beings. And that is what I've been doing for the last 6 years, is trying to figure out how, one, we all can operate as better human beings, lessen our carbon footprint, until I checked my Facebook. Someone said, check my emails, check them right now.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife said to me, I don't know if you're checking everything yet. I think you're an idiot. You need to turn the page. I think there's more pages you're missing.
Yeah.
And this whole new world opened up where I would all these emails, all these blue dots that hadn't been clicked on. And one of those emails came Ison Robbins, the producer of Blue Caprice, asking me for the last time, in about 3 months, we've been trying to find you. We got to go with this film. The director doesn't want anyone but you. Can you please call him? Can you read this letter? He wrote me this wonderful missive. I read it, and it just was so beautiful and artistic that he struck a chord in my artistic self that I hadn't had anyone cater to for almost 20 years. So this was really a journey of one artist to the next. I didn't do this film, really, I didn't think anyone would see it. Not what I wanted them to or not. I wanted to take this journey with this French artist that just seems so different from anyone that I've ever worked with, and definitely outside of the box of Hollywood standards, if Hollywood has standards. And that was the genesis of it all. We had no money when we started. I mean, no money. Maybe $100,000 when we started.
Right.
And of course, once people started, other investors started hearing about me saying yes, and I'm known as executive producer, and I'm not taking all this money up front because it just simply wasn't there. So I'll come on as executive producer. That's my payment because I love this guy. So I didn't have a script when I said yes. All I saw, went to his website and saw Runaway, a film that he was a creative, had a creative part in called Runaway with Selena Eubanks and Kanye West. Showed it to my wife, showed it to my family, fell in love with it. Watched it like 3 times a day. And I said, this guy's our next Stanley Kubrick, in my mind.
Right.
I said, I would be foolish not to work with him. I don't care how the journey turns out. I don't care if we have a script or not. I don't care. I want to work with this artist, and that's the honest God truth. That's how it all came about. And get to Sundance, the first time I ever saw it, as a producer, as an actor, everybody's insecure and power happy, want to see, okay, how do I look? Let me see the rushes, let me see the dailies, let me see the first assembly. I was completely confident, and no matter what the producers or the distributors that we didn't have at the time, whatever, I trusted him implicitly because of the conversation we had about a movie we wanted to make that was an indictment on the violence in the world, an indictment on violence in America, an indictment on guns being available to people with mental health issues, and an indictment on what it looks like to have a corrupt, toxic father-son relationship. That's the bigger movie that we made that was inspired by actual events of what we know, the DC snipers.
Right.
But that's not what Blue Police is about.
Well, and I read that you said, we're not making a biopic, and
No.
and I think that that's important. And what I appreciated about the film, watching it, was that it left a lot of room for interpretation. A lot of room.
Art does that,
It does.
supposedly.
Well, I thought it was important in this particular film because you mentioned the genesis between the incredibly distorted relationship between these two people. And I really got that from the scene in the woods.
Thank you.
I thought that was really brilliant, the way that came about.
Which happened to be actually based, now that is definitely based on an actual event. Not only did that happen, it happened multiple times in
I
the
mean, I
woods
can
of the state of
imagine.
Washington to break this kid down, to brainwash him, to turn him into what we now call child soldiers that are all fighting all over African nations. In my native country of Sierra Leone, that's how they were treated and given these life and death ultimatums. So what this actual man did was psychologically brainwash this kid and turned him into a child soldier, a one-man army.
Are you hoping, what do you hope the audience takes away most from this?
I hope that they continue to dialogue about it and look within themselves and see that there's someone in their family that's not quite right, no matter how charming, no matter how
Right.
perfect.
There's always something
You
usually
know,
going
if
on.
your gut says something's not right and your children or your nephew or your cousin is around that individual, no matter whether he's a biological or she's a biological parent or not, if something doesn't set well with you, it's not.
A few bodies. More than a few bodies. Random target. Total chaos. You see my son anywhere?
It's not really your son, is he?
What are you doing, dude?
How many people have you killed?
I'm sorry.
Colored Boys also, which you're producing, the web series, that also is an important message. Now, I read that Stacy, the writer and director and creator, had said that it touches upon the post-incarceration syndrome.
Prison
Now, do
syndrome.
you believe in that?
Absolutely.
Have you been affected by that?
Oh my God.
I mean, as society,
I got
we're
cousins-
affected by it.
I got cousins that, if you look up recidivism, you'll see their faces. I mean, I've been impacted. I come out of a generation that was heavily hit by the crack age when it first started in the 1980s, early 1980s, which I really enjoyed the film by Tommy Oliver called 1982, starring Hill Harper, Sharon Clayton. It's a time that we need to document and understand. Freeway Ricky Ross, who's just now is out of prison, out of Long Park. I used to write letters when I thought I wanted to play Freeway Ricky Ross and understand how the CIA's involvement in that whole crack addiction. And this whole, from the cradle, pipeline from the cradle to the penitentiary, this whole syndrome is real.
Right.
And it's been there. Even, a Wall Street journalist, I forget his name, wrote about it, talking about, I forget the name, slavery. Forget the name at the time, but it's really talking about how the peonage age came about after the Civil War ended. They were still creating laws that, particularly African American men, if you didn't have a job, you were thrown in prison as a vagabond, which ultimately ended up working on the chain gang for some corporation, some steel company, until they decided that you could go free. And if you were illiterate, you could be put in jail for that. You could be put in jail for just being jobless, which, well, if you're illiterate and you can't get a job, then of course you're going to be walking around looking for a job. But there had laws where you could be put in prison for that. So this whole idea that it hasn't stopped is just simply not true. In fact, it's increased, and that CCA, the corporate Corrections Corporation of America is a very, very viable company on Wall Street right now. Lauren Hooper, who's playing the wife, Julito McCullum, who's from the Wire fame, how they're grappling with their lives once the character comes back and tries to reintegrate himself into a family after 9 years of being incarcerated, and then watching him, knowing that 9 years is a long time. People have moved on, lives have moved on.
Oh yeah,
But he's still holding on to 9 years ago, and then you see what happens to the family trying to wrestle with that, but it's all bound, the foundation comes out of love and humanity, and that's why I'm so proud of her. That's why Mark Lamont Hill and myself are executive producers. That's why we're here, and I'm glad the Pan African Film Festival is supporting her on this Friday, and that we're working very hard to get it to the next level where it's bought by a distributor, where we can get it to the HBOs or the Showtimes or the Lifetime, or whatever station, to get it to the people so they can see this very, very talented woman take a very serious issue but make it universal, and then make people care about this issue.
I want to ask you more about her. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back here at the Pan African Film Festival with Isaiah Washington.
And there's a code on 8.
Wow, what a film.
Brainwashed, so I feel like he does have to be punished for what he did, but I do have sympathy for him.
But on the flip side, I also had sympathy, and Isaiah did such a brilliant job in really humanizing John Muhammad.
Definitely.
Because I almost felt guilty. Because in the beginning, I understood what he was going through and where he came from. And no, I don't agree with his actions, obviously. There would have been a much better approach. Don't do this in Hollywood. But I kind of felt sorry for him. And I felt myself feeling bad because I realized that he's a